You want to state your name for the record?
Michael Bashkin.
And what is it that you're up to? You've got a lot of irons and a lot of different fires, and so what does your whole footprint look like in the guitar world right now?
My whole footprint involves building custom guitars, doing some repair work as well, and I also do some teaching. I've taught a couple courses that are available online through Robbie O'Brien's school. I did a course on neck resets, and then actually just last week I did a course on fretwork, which covers pretty much everything about fretting from a repair perspective, a building perspective, compression fretting, how I fret my new guitars, and I think it's the total length is about 4.5 hours, so it's a pretty good amount of instruction. This summer, I'll be going out to the Mark Adams School of Woodworking in Indiana to teach a course on guitar ornamentation and inlay, so covering everything from binding and purfling to end graph and headstock ornamentation. And then I also run a podcast for the Fretboard Journal called Luthier on Luthier, where I interview other guitar builders, repair people, sometimes musicians. And that's been pretty popular and a lot of fun.
Cool. Yeah, I hear, I've listened to the podcast quite a bit, and it's pretty exciting. Your interview style is definitely not, you get some kind of interview styles where it seems almost like infomercial, and it seems like your podcast is more geared towards being useful for other people that are kind of in the trade rather than being for the general public. Would you say that, or would you say do you feel like that's kind of where you're going?
That is where I'm going. I did want the podcast to have a little bit of a broader appeal, just because I think, in general, people who end up in this profession are kind of funny, cantankerous, intelligent, interesting people. And so I was interested in not just, say, the guitars, but the person behind the guitars and kind of really hearing their story. Generally, it seems like most people don't come into this profession in a very direct route. There's always some sort of sideways path into it. And it's interesting to me to hear that backstory. I agree with you about the infomercial. I really didn't want it to be seen as, trying to promote any particular product or brand or thing about, anybody's guitars. I just wanted it to be kind of almost like the listener is a fly on the wall, just listening to a conversation that I would want to have anyway with that person.
Yeah, I think that's good. I mean, we're living in the age of self-promotion like I've never seen. Like I don't think the world's ever seen so many people capable of self-promotion. It seems like that space is so represented, it would be hard to even make a dent in it if you were to try. But tell me a little bit about your guitars. I see some hanging in the background there. Would you be willing to pull one down and kind of take a look at what your design aesthetic is?
Yeah. So this is my OM model. This is really my most popular model I've been building for the longest. And it's size-wise, it's actually smaller than a traditional Martin OM by about 5%. The curves are different. If you notice, it's curved all the way through the end block, the neck block. It's more of a pear shape. A Martin OM is more extended in this area. So it's a little bit more contemporary design. And, this one, I do have another bridge design I'll show you, but pretty traditionally inspired bridge here. A couple little facets, and the area behind the pins are extended. But I like to, kind of think of them as pretty clean lines.
Yeah.
And not too heavy on the ornamentation, kind of letting the wood speak. I tend not to do a lot of pearl work, or very little, but this is typical of, say, one of the more elaborate headstocks I would do.
Yeah.
With this is all pieced together like a puzzle, and these black veneer lines actually denote the separate pieces.
Uh-huh.
And that gives me a chance to change the grain orientation on the pieces and add a little bit of visual interest.
Cool.
So, and then I do a little a vine inlay. Obviously, this is a slotted headstock design, which I like the look of.
I see some solid peg heads back there too. So you aren't strictly solid or slotted. You're doing a little bit of both.
Yeah, I probably do 10 solid peg heads for every one slotted I do.
So are people reaching out for slotted, or are they saying I like the way slotted sounds better, or they like the aesthetic, or what?
Yeah, usually it's an aesthetic thing. They like the way they look. It's, for me, it's a lot more labor, to carve the slots, and just I do most of that by hand right now. So there is an upcharge for it, and that sometimes that is not acceptable to people, because I charge a pretty good price tag.
I would hope, yeah. It's especially. Are you square up there, or is it you're doing it with chisels, right? It's not a shaper template on there. Like you're actually carving.
No, these are. Yeah, these are kind of oblong slots. It's meant to kind of flow into the peg head design.
Yeah.
So, and give it a very open look to it.
So you've built a lot of guitars, basically the same guitars, and you've done slotted and unslotted. Do you feel like with that kind of increased break angle behind the nut, do you feel like you get a different sound out of the instrument with slotted versus unslotted, or?
Well, actually, I changed the angle on my slotted peg heads. They're more about 8 or 9 degrees versus 15 degrees for my solid. So there's even with that shallower peg head angle, there's a little bit more of a break angle, but I don't think it's enough to cause a difference in the tone.
Okay.
I think if anything, if you're going to get a difference tonally between the two, it's probably an issue of mass between them.
Yeah, it does seem like a variable. I remember some guys were real crazy for slotted peg heads for a while, and I don't know. Yeah, I've been out of the loop for so long. I don't even know if that's a thing anymore. That people are saying that you're getting a different sound out of them that way. But so. Your design aesthetic, did you come out of a school? Did you come out of a factory? Did you come out of where? I noticed, very few people design kind of in a vacuum. Like, what would you say your kind of design influences are? And was it from a school or a factory, or from seeing builders online, or how did you come?
Yeah, that's a good question. It definitely wasn't from a school. I'm going to come back to that. I've never worked for anybody else, and I've never worked in a factory setting, so there wasn't that issue. And I kind of started before the internet and YouTube was around, so I was really just kind of looking at the guitars that were around and I grew up with, like Martins and Gibsons, and that was my first inspirations, but I knew I didn't want to do vintage reproductions. So, that's why I changed all the curves on my OM to make it a little bit more of a contemporary looking guitar. And I will say that pretty early on, I took a 1-week building course with Harry Fleischman, and then a couple years later, I took a 1-week voicing course with Irvin Samaji, and just being in their shops, for that period of 5 days, was very influential. Just to look around and see the templates and see what was possible. That was very influential. And both those builders have very different, ideas about design. So I was kind of getting it from both ends.
Yeah, that era of guitar building, like it was so wide open. Like you think about how few people were doing it, and how kind of how it evolved. Like with all the Gurians and the Samojis and all those guys going different directions. It's what a fascinating time. Were you a young man when you got to get into those shops, or had you been building for a while and then just decided to kind of see what it would take to refine it a little bit more? Or
well, when I took the course with Harry, I think I might have only built one guitar from a kit at that point, and I was doing repairs. And then when I took Irvin's course, I think maybe I had built 10 guitars. So it was pretty early on. I was, compared to now, I was a young man, but it's not something I did right out of high school. I had a whole nother kind of career before I got into guitars. And so I was kind of getting into my mid-20s when I really got into guitar building.
So what was the career before guitars? Were you was it anything transferable, or?
A little bit, yeah. I was into forestry, and I was actually got an undergraduate and a graduate degree in forestry and soil science, and I got to work a bit in the tropics and teach tropical forest management and ecology. And I also, for a while, I was a soil scientist for the U.S. Forest Service. So in terms of what's transferable, I felt like I knew a little bit more about woods and their management than, say, your average guitar builder. But it was also a very academic track. So I learned, just a certain way of thinking about approaching questions and the use of statistics and hypothesis testing and things of that nature. So some of that has transferred over into my guitar building.
Yeah, guitar building is, there's a lot of hypotheses floating around guitar building, aren't there?
Yeah, that's for sure. and they're hard. Some of those, some
of those hypotheses oftentimes masquerade as facts. I don't know what it is about guitar building, but it seems like anybody that comes up with an idea, like it's just free. You're just free to like pound on a table as though it were reality without much testing. But yeah.
Well, maybe guitar builders were the first one to establish a post-fact world that we now live in.
It could be, yeah. I've certainly heard my share of doozies on stuff. It's made me, thinking about my younger days of pounding on tables and stating hypotheses as facts. I certainly don't want to make myself sound like I'm above that behavior either. I definitely has taken age and being wrong about a lot of things to kind of have that, kicked out of me, basically. But so you were into forestry and you were cruising along on an academic path, and so you got a hold of a kit. It sounds like your first experience was it with like a Stu Mac kit, or?
No, I bought it from Martin.
Oh yeah, the old 1833 shop kits.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So.
And so Martin Dreadnought, and was that like out of intellectual curiosity, or were you broke and you wanted a guitar and you figured kits are cheap?
No.
Or?
I really, really wanted to build a guitar, and I was already doing repairs at that time, and I bought the book, the Guitar Tradition and Technology, Compiano and Nadelson, and I literally broke the book. Like I had read that so many times that the binding on it fell apart, and all the pages were coming out, and so that was really my first teacher was that book. And I haven't reread it in a while, but I do remember each time I would read it, I felt like I would always pick up something more. It's really a great book. I know that a lot of the methods are maybe not as popular anymore. I don't want to use the word outdated because they still work, but there's been a lot of changes in how people build guitars since that book came out.
Yeah, like the older books, it's pretty easy to go and trash them, but they were all we had. When I was starting out in Latent, there were some books that are considered bad now that were all that we had. And even though you may consider the techniques to be outdated, they're definitely a launching point to think about, like, kind of how these things evolved. And without kind of knowing where we came from, as a trade, it's hard to, I think it's harder to see where we're going. I don't know if that makes any sense or not, but I still find a lot of inspiration from the older books where you may, roll your eyes at a couple things like epoxy refrets or something like that, but I still think those are valuable.
Yeah, oh, definitely. And, we have the benefit of hindsight and standing on their shoulders. So it's easy to have 20/20 vision in retrospect.
Yeah. So. I can't imagine that the violin world doesn't deal with the same exact thing. I mean, not necessarily now, because everything's kind of been refined, but there must be some early books floating around where people just didn't know what they were talking about, or probably or maybe just outright charlatanism with some of the varnish recipes or something. People could sell just about anything in a book.
Yeah.
So you were cruising along, and you were doing the real world. You built the kit, and then you were like, it must have gone well enough to where you thought, boy, I'd sure like to do this instead of that. Or how did that kind of
Oh no, it didn't go well enough. It was I created a guitar-shaped object. That's not. But please don't. I don't want to give you the impression that I was a luthier wonderkind right out of the bat. So. I had a lot to learn. I really did. But you got to start somewhere, and there was really the way that information is now. It was different back then. There was no YouTube, and for me, it was a lot of trial and error, with the emphasis on error. And but I was just I guess driven to keep going despite my propensity to make mistakes. Because I guess I tried to learn from them and keep moving forward. So there was a period of years where I was doing both, working as a professional forester and working on guitars. I had a position at the U.S. Forest Service that was full-time, and then I was able to find a half-time position as a researcher over at Colorado State University. And amazingly, at that time, I found a half-time position with benefits, full benefits. So I went down to 20 hours a week, and that gave me, 20 to 30 hours to work on guitars a week. And then just over a period of years, as I did more repair work, learned the craft, started to make some money to buy some tools, build a shop, I finally transitioned out of forestry altogether and into guitars full time. The pivotal moment for me was I was newly married, and my wife and I were planning on having a family. She was just planning on having it a little sooner than I was. I knew that if I was going to go into guitars full time, that I felt like I should do it before I had kids, because once I had other mouths to feed, I don't know if I would have been willing to take that leap. So, the prospect of being responsible for other human beings sort of pushed me off the cliff into full-time lutherie.
Yeah, I think that's That's an interesting. That's an interesting take on it. I don't know how an adult would make that switch. You know, like somebody that already had an adult job and they were like, you know, like after having kids would be like, I know, I'm going to be in cars.
Yeah.
So it seems irresponsible to do it that direction, but the other way seems completely appropriate. I'll just get involved in it first, and then I'll have the kids.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Well, it doesn't seem irresponsible. It is irresponsible.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've encountered a couple people over the years who, for example, wanted to get into lutherie, and they saw it as sort of actually a profession to to fall back on. And you know, which is a completely ridiculous notion. I thought they had it 180 degrees because they already had a good job, but they worked for a company and they thought, well, you know, you can always get laid off, so I want to learn to be a luthier so I can have a sure thing. So, yeah.
Oh boy, yeah, it's yeah. I've known some people that have made some romantic decisions later in life than they should have to get involved in it, and gave up a pension to pursue their dreams. And I just, oh man.
Yeah.
I started out, you know, like lutherie for me was an overachievement. So from kind of where I came from as a kid, and so I've never had that experience of throwing it all away for lutherie.
This is all gravy, huh? Nice.
It really was. It didn't dawn on me until later in life that perhaps I should have, you know, had less of a myopic view about my future. You know, being, you know, the next 12-pack of beer. You know, putting together the next 12-pack of beer was really important to me for a number of years.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so you got into repair. Where'd you so you got going on repair, but with kind of the impetus to build. But where did you first hang out your shingle for repair? Did you just out of your house, or?
Not quite. I was really fortunate. There was a music store in town called Osprey Music, and it was run by a guy named Charlie Gannon and his wife Mary. And I just simply volunteered. You know, I said, hey, I'm interested in guitar repair. Can I help? You know, I'd really like to learn. And Charlie was very, very kind to me, and, you know, said sure. And so I got to look over his shoulder and, you know, restring guitars, and then eventually kind of worked into actually doing some repairs for him and the guitar shop and getting paid. And then another guitar shop moved into town, and I started doing repair work for them. And then finally, I started, you know, working out of my garage and taking on whatever repair work came my way, and started building.
And what town is this in? Where are you out of?
This is in Fort Collins, Colorado.
Oh, okay. All right. So, and you're in California right now, right?
I'm in Colorado.
Oh, in Colorado. I don't know why I thought you were in Colorado or in California. I'm maybe having an aneurysm or something.
All right.
So, I'm sorry. What?
If I see you go down, I'll call 911. So don't worry.
So you're luthing away. You getting into repair. Are you working in shops where you're seeing like a really good and like on your own? Are you starting to live in a community where you're seeing a lot of different kinds of instruments? Are you getting to touch and kind of handle some interesting stuff that's influencing your work, or are you? Yeah.
Well, so Fort Collins, it's a college town. Really, the whole what we call the Front Range, which is Fort Collins, Boulder, Denver, Colorado Springs. There was a huge music scene. Well, still is, and it was really kind of focused on the sort of newgrass, bluegrass. So you know, there are just a lot of musicians around, a lot of people playing guitar, and I was fortunate to become certified Martin warranty pretty early on. It took a while, but once I had that, then I started to get a lot of acoustic guitars, coming in the shop, and I got a chance to work on a lot of older vintage pieces, and for a while, and by this point I had moved out to a commercial location where I've been for the last over 18 years. There were times where I've had, I had trouble walking in my shop because I had so many guitars in here, and that was really, there's no substitute for what I call bench time. You just got to work on a ton of guitars. They all have their own personalities. You'll be faced with a variety of different situations, and all of that really kind of helped inform, also how I build guitars and develop the techniques that I use now. But yeah, that was really, I guess, kind of where I cut my teeth, was basically doing as much repair work as I possibly could, and there was a lot of it that came across my bench. I was mostly working on acoustics, but I did a lot of work on electrics too.
Cool. So, but it looks like clearly your heart was always probably more trending towards the acoustic side of the work, probably more of a mercenary on electrics, or do you have a little bit of a soft spot in your heart for electrics as well?
No, I have a soft spot just because the music that I like is actually electric. I'm a rock and roll blues guy.
Yeah.
So a lot of my favorite guitarists are electric guitar players. It's what I like to listen to in the shop. It's just, there was something more about an acoustic guitar in terms of the woodworking aspects that I was really drawn to.
Yeah.
But if I and there's a lot of acoustic guitarists I really admire and have seen over the years, like Leo Kottke is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
But I also love Jimi Hendrix and B.B. King. So
yeah, it's interesting. I feel like maybe I'm the same way. I definitely listen to more electric guitar stuff, but when it came time to specialize in repair, I definitely was more interested in the acoustics, just from the the standpoint of there's just more to challenge yourself with. It seems like maybe an unfair generalization to people who take on electric builds or electric repair, but for me maybe that's erroneous too. I don't know, but it felt like it, so that's where I wound up going. So, but yeah, I definitely listen to more electric music than acoustic music. So you're repairing away, and you get going building. You're repairing, but you've always you have this goal to become a builder. When was the first time that somebody laid cash down on the bench for one of your acoustic guitars, and you were like, oh my God, this could really happen. There could be a transition here?
I think it was when I started to go to guitar shows. Like the very first show I went to was a Healdsburg show. I don't remember the year. It might have been like around 98, maybe.
Yeah.
And I sold a guitar off the table, and got an order, and I got some dealer interest, and that's when I felt like there was some some possibilities of maybe not losing as much money as I was.
Mm-hmm. So there was a number of years where that was not. I mean, there was no guarantee that it was going to be a viable transition. Like it seems that's one of my wife is always like, you should build guitars, and I'm like, I don't think so. I don't think I should. Like I don't see personally, I don't see the vision. You got to have a really strong either desire to be cutting the wood, or a real strong sense that you're onto something either design-wise or acoustically or something like that, that you've really got something that the market needs. Did you feel like that, or were you just kind of like going along and...
No, I didn't feel like I had any particular, niche that wasn't being, that was ripe for exploitation. Maybe that's overstating the case a little bit, but I guess for me, it sort of happened this way, in that because I was running a busy repair shop, I'd have guitars coming and going, dropping off guitars, picking up guitars, and I'd have, one or two of my guitars in the shop on the wall hanging up. And, somebody would come in and say, hey, what's that? Oh, I built that. Oh, cool. Can I check it out? And, that was a way that I actually ended up building quite a few guitars for local customers. Was just through the repair business, I was able to, build up the building business. So, yeah, and it's a niche market, so there's only so many people buying handmade custom guitars in a particular area. So that was never a long-term viable strategy. It always had to be, selling guitars globally.
Yeah. I never understood, I never understood how guys could do that. Like it does seem like you would either need to live in a booming metropolis to do it that way, or you'd have to get out on the road and go to guitar shows. And
well, I don't want to give you the impression that it was a smooth transition. It was not always a linear growth. There were bumps along the way and setbacks, and times where I thought I should just going to concentrate on repair, and then times where I thought I'd just concentrate on building. And I think I've reached kind of a happy medium now. So,
what's your current? How many a year are you doing right now?
Well, I typically build anywhere from, say, 3 to 5 guitars at a time. So that's just kind of what I do with my methods and the space that I have.
Mm-hmm. So however many that winds up producing in a year just kind of depends on how complicated the builds are. Or...
Yeah, I over a year right now I'm doing about 12 guitars. The time really varies because, as you suggested, some of the guitars are highly customized, and it may take me 40 hours just to do a headstock and a rosette, because it's a it's a one-off design, and there's a lot of handwork and testing, or just simply sitting down with pencil and paper and design work involved, and a lot of back and forth with customers. So some of my guitars take 200 plus hours, and some are half that.
So the design stuff that fascinates me, and getting back to my wife saying you should build guitars, when I sit down with pen and paper to try to draft anything, it looks like a 7-year-old drawing a fire truck. Like I don't have a design sense. Did you develop a design sense? Do you have innate one, or did you do art in school? Or
actually, I did. Yeah, well, I did. I was an art major before I was a forestry major, and I was really into photography. To backtrack, a whole bunch. My dad was a hobbyist photographer, and we had a dark room in our house and a ton of photography books. And I grew up just looking through photography books, Time Life books. The one that really sticks out, it's called the Family of Man. And I must have looked through that book 1,000 times. It's all black and white. And it's, I feel like, if I have any design sense, I would trace it back to just endlessly looking at black and white pictures growing up. And I went to Rutgers University for a year right out of high school, and then I dropped out, and I decided I wanted to become a professional photographer. So because I just picked up photography as a hobby, And I worked in New York City and in a big commercial studio as a photography assistant for a while. And we did everything from portraits to commercial shoots, product photography, and everything from 35 millimeter up to 8 by 10 large format. And, I spent days and days upon end in a dark room developing film and printing pictures. And then when I decided to go back to school, I went in as an art major, with photography being the medium. Of course, I had to take courses in other parts of the discipline. I really liked the ceramics course that I took and some of the drawing courses. But I went back to school out in Montana, University of Montana in Missoula, and just sort of fell in with the forestry and wildlife crowd and got really into hiking and learning more about the outdoors. And so, yes, before I was in forestry, I was into art, but I never really thought that I had necessarily a design sense. But the way I design things now is I can only see it in sort of rough sketches and full scale, and then I hang it on the wall and I look at it, and I just I don't really think about things in a formal sense. It's really just intuitive as to whether something looks right to me, if lines resolve, if proportions are balanced, things of that nature.
Yeah, if I had to go back and shake my my idiot kid self and tell him something, shake him by the shoulders and tell him something, it would be to pick up more skills for no reason. Like you never know when they're going to come up, and like you may have spent a lot of time thinking that art background might have been a dead end for you, just to have it turn into a very useful, even if you aren't using it formally, like it must be kicking around in your head somewhere, some of the things that if not just subconsciously, it must be influencing your work somehow, I would think. It kind of reminds me of like, I went to when I was building an instrument for myself back when I tried that stuff. I sat down to carve a neck and I just started carving and one popped out, and it was just pretty obvious to me. It just popped out because I've been around them so much that like something's been internalized. So maybe some of that art stuff just kind of internalized. So East Coast to not quite West Coast, but you definitely got out of the East Coast vibe. Do you feel like you've completely like you've shook all the East Coast stuff off of you, or do your West Coast people still go, man, you are one East Coast dude right there?
It's funny. Sometimes I have people come into the shop and I'm just talking to them, and then they look at me and they go, "You're from New York, right?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah." So there's something must be in there. I still get angry when I drive.
You got to.
Yeah, and then I'm just a total elitist bastard asshole about pizza and sandwiches. And I just don't think people outside of New York, they just haven't shown me the goods. I haven't. The best pizza and Italian subs and meatball subs that you can get, New York area. Oh, same fucking thing. Sorry. You can edit that out.
Free to be you and me.
There's a New York coming out. Same thing with bagels. It's like you go outside of the New York City area, and I feel like they have bagel-shaped objects.
Yeah, they're not.
Yeah,
I will say that's real. Being from Oregon, though, there's a lot of food stuff that I took for granted there that the East Coast just can't. Mm-hmm. You can't get a good breakfast around here. Like, I went to a diner when I first moved up to Westchester, and I got breakfast, and I ordered hash browns, and I wanted gravy on my hash browns, and they brought it out with brown dinner gravy, like the kind with the green bean in it. So I had hash browns with like brown dinner gravy on it, because they didn't understand that
Yeah, that's not right.
Well, it's not right. I don't. I kind of wonder, like, if sausage gravy isn't a thing around here, just because not a lot of people are going to eat sausage because of religious constraints. But I don't know what it is. But you just can't get a good breakfast around here. That's just all there is to it.
All right.
So let's do. Do we have anything more to discuss on kind of the history of Latent, or do you want to get into doing a little bit of a shop tour? I'll tell you what, on the Patreon thing, you showed me a tip yesterday. I'd really like to get back to for the regular YouTube, which is that your net file thing. But you want to how many square feet are you Latent out of right now? Are you in a small space or?
Yeah, I've got about, I think, 850 square feet with about another 350 in storage. Mm-hmm. So I have, we've got a small office. I call it corporate headquarters. Uh-huh. I have a bench room that I keep humidity and temperature controlled, and then I have a noisy, dusty machine room that I don't keep humidity controlled, and that's where all the the big power tools are.
Uh-huh. So are you buying dimension lumber? Are you buying cants? What's your raw materials coming in?
I really do a bit of everything. If it's good wood, I'll get it, and that even included at times I've harvested my own trees, Engelmann spruce here in Colorado. When I was working down in the tropics, I would buy, raw lumber of some woods and bring them back with me. I do buy wood from, the standard sources that we all use. But generally, I probably got pretty stocked up with woods about, 10 or 15 years ago. So I'm pretty selective about what I buy now.
Yeah,
but I do have a Resaw, so I'm fine buying unprocessed wood and cutting it up myself.
Well, do you want to grab the phone, and why don't we start at the beginning of the process at the Resaw and work our way towards the finished guitar?
Sure.
I think that might be an interesting way to do it.
All right.
If you could throw your phone back into landscape, that'd be awesome. Boy, right. You do have a Resaw.
Yeah, so this is my Resaw. It's a Hitachi CB75F. Uh-huh. And as long as I can get pretty geeked out on the specs if you want to talk about it. But I like to use an all carbide tip blade. This is a blade from Laguna. And it's a 2.5 inch wide blade. I did make some modifications to the saw. I put a much larger 3 horsepower motor and changed the pulleys to change the blade speed on there. Mm-hmm. So if I have any boards come into the shop, I'll cut it up on this saw, and then I'm able to further process things. I've got an Inca 10.5 inch wide joiner planer. So before I get to the Resaw, I'll obviously start with some flat surfaces, which I'll establish on this tool. And once the boards come off the Resaw, I've got a wide belt sander. This is one of the, I don't know if it's considered I guess it's considered a small sander by some standards, but it's about 18.5 inch wide belt that does oscillate. And I really do like this machine. I also make all my own bindings and purflings, and find this tool to be invaluable. So, and then as long as we're standing back here, this is a view of my machine room. I've got my table saw with a router in the ring. Mm-hmm. There's wing. There's a flammable storage cabinet for my finishes, more power tool storage. This is my CNC. It's about a 2-foot by 3-foot bed. It's made by a company called Romax.
Okay.
And yeah, so I use Mach 3 to run it. One thing that I was really appalled by was the amount of dust this tool creates. So I don't have it down now, but I created this hood that is on a pulley system. I can lower it down over the whole machine, and there's a door on the front of it, so it can stay down, and I can, cut my parts, and I have dust collection hooked up to that.
Oh, good.
I'll back up some more.
So is that plexi, or did you just make that up?
Yeah, it's plexiglass. I just made it. I put a piano hinge on that front door.
Oh, yeah.
And then the other benefit to it, which is really nice, is it cuts down on the router noise a huge amount.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll go from, probably 95 decibels down to below 80. So it's really nice just in terms of operationally, to have that down. If I'm cutting really large parts, I will hook up the dust shoe that comes with the machine.
So
for most things, I'll keep that hood down.
So what CAD you're using? Who are you using for camo? Who are you using for CAD?
For CAD, I use Rhino 6, and then I just got started using the Rhino Cam module that comes with it. So everything's in one package now.
And so, how long have you been doing? It doesn't sound like you grew up in a CAD environment. How long have you been doing the CAD Cam thing?
Yeah, I think I first started dabbling in it probably maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and then once I got the CNC, then I had to get a lot more serious with it. I've been doing the CNC work for probably about 2.5 years now. Maybe I've had this machine, and
what do you feel like the intellectual barrier to entry on that was like? I mean, was it just like completely overwhelming and a tough slog, or do you feel like it's become pretty approachable to get through that information?
Yeah, for me it was a tough slog because I really didn't appreciate the amount of software that it was involved, and I was just ignorant of what it actually takes to get one of these machines up and running and actually being useful. Several people kind of warned me that it won't save you time, and they're right. So and there's some other things about it that sometimes I've questioned. Like I've had some maintenance issues where I've had to break down the machine and replace all the bearings. And, you're not going to get that from a chisel.
So, or a shaper or, or a pin router. I wonder about a lot of that stuff too, but
it does I beg the question as to why, pardon me, why I have one of these. And the truth is I like it. It's fun. I like the CAD cam work, and I can see in the long run, as I plan to do this, say, for another 20, 25 years, I'm going to appreciate the, this machine being able to do some of the, some of the parts for me. And And
what kind of parts are you banging out on it right now? What's kind of your,
Well, right now I've mostly used the machine to make jigs, fixtures, things like that. I've made a whole series of molds, which we can take a look at, where I tried to integrate build features into the mold. And I'm just getting going on parts. I've mostly been using as a 2.5D type of machine, but now I'm getting into 3D. So I've made my first bridges on here with the 3D carving, and I do hope to start carving or rough carving some necks on here. I've made enough necks by hand where, I can do it. I'm good at it. I can do it reasonably fast. but I also don't feel like I need to keep doing it that way.
Yeah.
So,
that mold making is one thing that I think is the engineering part of it is something that people don't realize. Like, that is pretty slick because, like I've sat over a blueprint with a piece of plexiglass and a fine tip Sharpie, and you're just not ever gonna make those cuts the way the CNC is gonna make the cuts and get your molds lining up, and make sure that your center lines are gonna be on the center of your guitar.
Right.
But yeah, so cool. So what else? I see like some epic dust collection back there. Another maybe 18-inch bandsaw.
Let me switch this around again. So this is a recent acquisition. This is a late '60s Dayton variable speed drill, which I'm just smitten with. It's a great tool, and man, it really runs true. The variable speed works great, and so I really like that. I've got another smaller drill press that I don't use much anymore, so we'll see if it stays in the shop.
Yeah, the run out on those Grizzly drill presses is pretty appalling.
Yeah. There's some other things that I really like having that this one didn't have, so I actually put in I tapped a screw in here so I could do a quill lock on it. But if you compare it to the quill lock on the Dayton, I mean, just look at this thing. This is old school beef right here. It's really nice. So then I've got an oscillating spindle sander. I've got another bandsaw that I always keep a 1/4-inch blade on for cutting smaller pieces, curves. I have a Woodtech combination disc and belt sander. And the walls are just covered and littered with molds and jigs. Yeah, some of which I use and some of which I forget to throw away. So, and
isn't that the way?
Let's see. That's a poster my daughter got me. Everything up top there, that's all long-term wood storage. I've got 16-foot ceilings in the shop, so I built this whole part of the shop and then reinforced the ceiling so I can actually store a lot of stuff up there.
So are you in the cold part of Colorado?
Yeah, I'm not sure there is a warm part. But
there isn't, like maybe down by New Mexico almost. There's a warm part down there.
Well, that's true. All right, as long as you ask. I'm just gonna show you what's going on outside right now.
Oh, come on.
No, I'm serious. Check this out.
It's not even November yet. Oh my God.
We had record fires last week. Literally record-breaking fires in the history of Colorado. And then we had a foot of snow yesterday.
Well, you got to.
That's cold temperatures, the whole thing. So.
But anyway, I mean, your tall ceilings in there must come at quite a heating and climate control expense.
Well, they do, and the reason that I made my bench room separate, you can see I have a sliding glass door that's actually an exterior door. Yeah. That I got at Surplus. So I keep that room, nice, warm, toasty, and then the bench room, during the dead of winter, I'll just keep the heat on at 50 degrees in here and wear a hat and, a nice wool sweater, and it's fine. So, and then this back half of the shop is actually not mine. It's my neighbor's. That's his dust collector bag, which he's hooked up to his much larger wide belt, which is right there. And then let's see, I'll come over here. This is my spray booth back in the corner here. It's kind of the size of a large closet. It's basically a very expensive box with a fan. Yeah. And it's hooked into the fire suppression system. I leased this space, so everything had to be all up to code, and I had to have the state inspections and an engineer involved. And all of that stuff.
Well, that's all that stuff that being a forestry guy, probably that was a real natural thing to do. I know a lot of guys just kind of wing and a prayer it, but getting through that paperwork is pretty important if you want to stay in business long term.
Yeah, not just to mention for insurance reasons too.
Yeah.
So
can you
make sure.
Can you pop the door on that and take a look inside?
Yeah, sure. Let me turn on the light. See, this is a explosion-proof fixture. So before I open the door, I'm just going to preface this. If I say, it's not like I have the GIMP in here or anything, but I'm going to preface it by saying I just got 2 cases, and they were brand new. They're for the guitars that I've just finished, and I've been airing them out for a while. So I've got the case just gassing off in here because I haven't been spraying anything, but. I'm only in the spray booth, really once every 2 months. I do a big spray session. Yeah. So, but I've got a filter bank in the top, in the back, explosion-proof fixture up there, and sorry, you can't see it, but a 3-stage filter system here.
Oh my God!
With a large desiccant. So, because I had. So many challenges with finishing. I really wanted to remove any possibility of airline contamination. So I was trying to, buy everything.
Well, I know how
not
much,
cut any corners.
I know how much that air filtration costs. It's not cheap, and the the stuff that comes out of your compressor, and heaven forbid, what's condensating in your lines and stuff, but what I think a lot of people don't realize is that your compressor is constantly making little tiny metal particles that it's sending through the airline.
Oh yeah, totally. And it's contaminated. You have got to clean the air coming out of the compressor. Yeah, 100%.
And one of those little moisture traps from Harbor Freight just isn't. I mean, if you're trying to produce a perfect finish, those little filters just are not gonna do it.
Yeah,
we spent so much time at Breedlove picking stuff out of the finish. I can't believe how much time we spent scraping stuff out of finish. It was so insane. You just take any of your profitability on the guitar and just ball it up and throw it in the garbage can if you're not willing to put that filtration in line.
I like to think of finish as a superior form of dust collection, because whatever dust you have, it's going to end up in your finish. So you really have to be careful of not only what's in your airline, but the ambient air as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Did you want to see the mold and some of those features that we were talking about earlier? Or
you want to go in line and go to parts processing first? Are you doing all your blocks, shaping all your blocks out in the other room, or did we kind of go past? Where are you bending your wood at?
I'll show you. Let me grab some of my blocks here. Sorry about the jerky camera work. I'm just carrying this thing around. So. All right, so I just have a couple Fox benders.
Oh yeah,
and I make my own forms on the CNC, but this is a design that's been around for 25, 30 years. Is probably when Charles Fox came up with it. And
are you blanket or light bulb with that one?
I do 2 blankets, blanket on top and bottom.
Okay.
So this is how I bend up my sides, and then for making the blocks, I do some rough cutting on the table saw, and then I used to do this part by hand, but now I'll do a back arch on the CNC.
Yeah.
And then a huge step for me was I then have a jig where I flip this on its end and I cut in this curve to the cutaway, which is, it's not a straight, simple curve, and I was able to take it, right off my molds. And so now fitting the blocks is a much quicker and neater process for me than it used to be. Also on the CNC, I made up I gotta keep going back and forth here. I made up a series of these large, just radius sanding calls. So this one's 15 feet. Mm-hmm. So when something comes off the CNC, excuse me, not 15 feet, 15 inches, like when this block comes off the CNC to clean up the machining marks, I just do a little sanding like that, and goes right into the mold with, really a minimal of any additional fitting. Mm-hmm. By this stage, I think I've honed the process enough where the blocks go in quickly and neatly. And then, so speaking of the CNC and the blocks, these are the cutaway blocks, and this part is convex, this part is concave. And this is actually a complicated, three-dimensional shape. And you can see, this is where it needs to fit in just right. And I used to do all this by hand, and it worked fine, but it just takes a while. And you could still do it by hand, but once I've written the program, again, these blocks just sort of sit right in nice. I just do a little cleaning up of the machining marks. So, and end block, very similar process. I do the back radius on the CNC, and then clean it up on those sanding forms that I made. So that's how I do the blocks, bend up the sides, and then I created a mold that I try and integrated some build features into the mold. So, for example, not only do I have a center line or a center line indexing hole, I have these mold extensions. So I've got these two little 1/4-inch holes here, and then these blocks snap right into those holes. So now I've got a full clamping height for my blocks, and I do this on both the neck block and the end block. And again, you don't need to do it this way. I used to just put a little flexible backing call and some clamps here and here, but I was trying to take advantage of the technology to make the guitars, the building process come together a little bit neater in the mold.
Well, I'd say, like that neater in the mold thing, I mean, it pays dividends down the road, I would think, just because, like little foibles in the beginning of the process kind of tend to snowball into bigger issues later in the process, it seems like. Yeah,
that's an excellent point. I like to think that the finishing process actually starts at this stage. Mm-hmm. That you got to keep your sides perpendicular, clean, so the cleaner you can build now, the easier the finishing is going to be later.
Well, I mean, getting back to that CNC engineering, I'm sure when you're making your molds that you were you're able to very quickly take into consideration the width of your heating blanket and all that kind of apparatus, and kind of engineer into that. That's something in the old days, like, I mean, good luck with that with a a Sharpie and a French curve. I mean, yeah,
very, very quickly, and repeatedly too. If I wanted to make another set, I already had the program. So the other thing I did, I'm going to try and give you a top view here, is all of these angles and little facets on the outside of the mold are meant for clamping anywhere along the mold. So, for example, you can see I've got a flat here, and this is lined up so that it goes right into the cutaway block. Yeah. And again, it's it gives me a good clamping surface. It's quick. These little holes were to clamp in my side braces. But these aren't quite working out so well. So I'm not sure if I'm going to keep those on future molds.
Did you generate a side profile template off of your CNC so that you didn't have to do so much with the radius sanding blocks, or you?
I'm just at that stage now where I've created a full 3D model of the guitar, including the taper from front to back and the arching of the back. So I'm going to start to work some of that in. Right now, what I'm doing is, so once I get to that stage and the blocks are in, I've got a converted potter's wheel, motorized with some radius dish forms of all my different sizes that I need, and so I'll put the radius in the top and the back with this method. But right now I'm working on some different methods, maybe involving the CNC, or at least making fixtures on the CNC to do that.
Yeah, because that's dusty business right there, isn't it?
Yeah.
I lost the picture. Let's see here.
Sorry, Ian.
That's all right, man.
I got a call.
That's so light duty. I'm not even going to edit that out. Just make people suffer through that.
All right, sweet. So okay, so the blocks are in. The sides are rough radiused, and then I put in my kerfing.
We lost. There we go. You put in your kerfing. You know, that was something when I was working in the factory. Of all the things I could never get the hang of, kerfing I could never get the hang of it.
Yeah, well, it's a pain in the ass. Let's face it.
Is it?
Especially,
I'm not telling tales out of school.
No. Well, because if you think about what's happening, especially on the back with the taper and the radius, it's really following this compound curve, and depending on your kerfing, it really doesn't want to do that. So you got to force it in there. There are some ways around it. For example, like using individual blocks, which is the traditional method, or Kevin Ryan developed this kerfing. I can't quite remember the name of it. It's something 4. And that can move in 3 axes. Oh. And so it's really easy to get it to conform to whatever radius you're putting it on. Yeah. I've been going with solid linings. So I have a whole different set of problems and challenges using that method.
Are you doing solid linings for timbre or for just ease of manufacturing, or?
No, more for difficulty of manufacturing.
Yeah. You want to heap some problems onto the build process?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I don't know if you can.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
See this. Yeah. So what I like about it is I really like the way they look. I like the way they look. And, you know, when you route the binding and purfling ledge, I use a pretty thick binding. Yeah. That's often thicker than my sides, and I just hated routing into traditional kerfings. It just, but if I'm routing into solid linings, I feel like, I don't know, that everything is just going to come together that much nicer. I do think tonally there's definitely something going on, especially on the top. The solid linings are really, really stiff. And so they stiffen up, you know, this area right here. They add a little bit more mass. But right now, in terms of my theories and ideas about voicing, I like going with solid linings. So yeah, it's for visual reasons and acoustic reasons. Okay, and then where are we? All right, linings are in.
Yeah, I think we're fixing to glue the top and back on.
And then, you know, I don't do anything too weird with how I make the tops and backs. Here's backs and tops for my next build. This is a set of Koa, and I'll put in a back stripe at this stage. and then I'll brace it up, carve it, let into the linings, and then the top and the back go on. And then for my necks, again, right now I've been doing everything by hand, but my neck design is.
When you put the tops and backs on, are you using like a press, or are you using a bunch of spool clamps, or how are you?
I do it in a go-bar deck.
Go-bar deck, okay.
Yeah. So I just have I protect the top or the back, and then for the back, I use a bunch of different go-bars all around the rim. But for the top, I have a large padded caul that easily follows the curvature of the top, which is really gentle compared to the back. So it's easy to clamp onto. And I may just put a couple go bars onto that caul, and then I'll throw a couple of these dumbbells on there too, just some added clamping pressure. So,
are you are you a tight bond or hide glue, or what kind of adhesive are you liking for construction phase?
I use hide glue. So, yeah, but I don't use hide glue to glue on the top or the back. So I'm not. I just feel like I need a little extra working time to get things on there. It's
a bold move. It's a bold move.
Yeah, and
I don't know that there's much to be gained from that. And actually, I think given tight bonds, tight bond's a good glue. I use hide glue a lot for a lot of different things, but I think it gets kind of overused for kind of mystical reasons that I don't fully understand. But
I use hide glue for anything that I consider to be acoustically important. So all the bracing, the bridge. I don't really use hide glue in the neck. I glue the fingerboard on with epoxy because there's no water in it.
Yeah.
So I use a variety of glues in the guitar.
Yeah, I think that's a good move. The hide glue, like I like it on the spots where it counts. It definitely counts on bridges, man. Like bridges guitars sound a lot better with a hide glue bridge joint. Plus it's pretty easy on vintage guitars that you're trying to kind of manage erosion of multiple re-glues. I like the way that when hide glue fails, it fails pretty gently on some of those older guitars, whereas tight bond tends to rip up a bunch of spruce when it decides to come up.
Yeah. Okay. So I also find that hide glue it's really strong. Like
it's super strong.
It holds a bridge better than tight bond.
It does.
I've been really impressed with it. It's surprising stuff. And all you got to do is like let a rock of it get hard, and then kind of going it around and see what it's like cured out outside of a joint. It's pretty crazy stuff. It's darn near a rock when it goes off. I mean, I'd put it up against West 105 in terms of like hard. I think it's harder than like some of the hard epoxies. Yeah.
But
I agree.
So anyway, tops on. And you got the whole neck deal to deal with.
Yeah, so my I'm going to switch you back here. My current method is I do one-piece necks. So I carve them out of these big blocks, solid blocks, mahogany that are 4 by 4 inches or 4 by 3 inches about. And
you waxed up on the end there? Is that wax on the end grain there?
Yeah, this is just wax. So probably in the future, I may not be able to make necks this way just because this type of dimensional mahogany might not be available. But I've got a pretty good supply, and even of some large 12 and 16 quarter boards that I bought a long time ago. But if when the time comes, I can definitely start making necks, piecing together, splicing on headstocks and heels. I like to use a two-way truss rod made by Mark Blanchard, which is a really, really nice rod. And for any builders listening to this, I suggest you check it out. I've gone kind of back and forth over the years about putting carbon fiber in the necks. Right now I'm back on it. So I do put some carbon fiber 2 rods, basically running parallel to the truss rod. I do a mortise and tenon bolted joint, and the fingerboard is glued to the top. It's similar to like a Collings type of neck joint. I don't use they use hanger bolts to attach their neck, and I just use a little different system to do that.
You don't have threaded insert or what?
No, I don't like threaded inserts.
Yeah.
Especially in end grain. I mean, there's some ways to get around it. So I'll show you what I use. So I had a machinist make these aluminum 3/8 rod. He tapped 2 holes at a 1/4-20 spacing. So this goes up inside the tenon, and there's no way that this is ever going to spin out. I epoxy it in there. And then, one little added feature, I don't have any necks that I could show you. Oh, maybe I can. Hold on. Is that on the tenon, I put in 3 cross grain rosewood splines that are face grain, so that as the bolts tighten, this is pulling into rosewood face grain, not end grain, so that if this was ever over tightened, there's no way this is going to, pull out. It may be a little bit of overkill, but if really the end grain, there's not much holding this in there, even though it's epoxied in there. So
I think that's why Collins glues theirs too. Like, it seems like the whole purpose of having a bolt on is that you're gonna do you glue your mortise and tenon too, or is it?
I don't glue it. So here you can see those 3 rosewood lines, and again the grain direction is really key.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are face grain splines, and there's no way that that aluminum rod is going to pull through those rosewood splines. So, yeah. So anyway, I have enough trouble sleeping at night, so I didn't want to give myself one more thing to kind of obsess about.
Well,
that's why I put those splines in.
If it makes you feel any better, all those Martins from I think the late 2000s, early 2010s, where they had that one single threaded insert in there, and then the mortise and tenon, those threaded inserts have all pulled through. So I usually pull those off, epoxy them back in, and then put a cap of rosewood over the top of it, so that only the cap screw can get through. Who knows if that'll hold.
Yeah, I did that repair a lot, and I always like to put a little bit of Loctite on that screw when I put it back in.
That makes sense too.
I just find that it's removable Loctite. It's the blue. Yeah. And anything I can do to help keep that screw from vibrating loose, I think is worth doing.
Yeah.
So
you've got a very serviceable neck joint then. If your neck needs to come off, you don't need to like steam it or do anything crazy. You're just releasing the fingerboard extension and pulling it right out.
Yeah. And then I should mention that there's a lot of builders who are now using a fully bolt-on neck. So they have an extension of the neck shaft that goes underneath the fingerboard, which sits in a large mortise in the top of the guitar. And, I see pros and cons of doing it that way. So it's something that I may really think about. But I've been doing this method for quite a while. It's been working for me. I can even touch up the neck angle without taking the fingerboard off the face of the guitar. I just loosen the bolts, and then there's just enough flex in the neck where I can get some sandpaper under there and change the neck angle. So it's still pretty serviceable, but not as serviceable as a full bolt-on neck or like, what Taylor's doing.
Yeah, boy. I mean, the Taylor one, I mean, now that CNC is becoming available to us commoners, it seems like more guys are going to go to that. But that Taylor neck joint is such an engineering project. Like, I think that if a guy most mortals, if they were trying to do that in their own shop, I think they'd come up with something that looked pretty rough.
Yeah.
And even the Taylors, I mean, I can't help but think that those probably look rough depending on what time of year it is. I can't imagine that those don't wind up producing some gaps here and there that don't look like a traditional neck joint, but whatever.
Yeah, they do. And there's actually Mohawk makes it, but there's a little colored putty that you're supposed to put in around the neck, and I have seen that on occasion just dry out and shrink, and but one thing I guess here I'm more traditional, but I do like this look of the fingerboard on the guitar. That is just nice, and down there it's not at all. So
yeah,
but I can see both ways.
Yeah, like honestly, your average guitar consumer, like at some point we're impressing them, we're not impressing each other. Like that's something that took me a long time to figure out and repair. Is I need to quit repairing for other repair guys. I mean, at some point there should be some standards, and we should agree on what constitutes good craftsmanship versus charlatanism. Yeah. But getting lost in the weeds trying to impress other guitar nerds, I think, is a road to financial ruin. But that's just my own opinion. So let's see. You got the neck on. What finish are you using? And what kind of pore filler and stuff are you using on your open grain stuff?
So I use an oil paste pore filler, colored, pretty traditional stuff. I like the look of it, especially on mahogany necks. They have the dark pore fill. Yeah. So, I've been all over the map with finishing, but right now I'm really pretty happy with a fairly traditional finish. I say fairly because I do use a poly sealer, 2-part poly sealer underneath the nitro. So I don't use a vinyl sealer.
Is that to get away from some of the adhesion issues that you get with oil-based pore filler, or is that what's the thinking on the poly seal coat?
Well, it is an adhesion issue, so it makes a great surface for the nitro to stick to. I find that especially with oily rosewoods, which I work a lot with, it really seals in the oils. I'm sure you've seen this on some older guitars, how Cocobolo or Brazilian can actually bleed out into the spruce or lighter areas. Yep. So this sealer that I use, it really locks everything in, and it's also very stable. It's got an extremely high solids content, so once you put it on there, it's not going to shrink back and get it flat. And then yes, it also seals in the paste pore filler really nice. So that's my base coats, and then I spray nitro on top of that.
So is that a 2-part system, or is that
it's a 2-part.
And are you spraying it or hand applying it, or?
I am spraying it.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So you must have. Do you have two different gun setups for for that and the nitro, or are you just cleaning it out really good before the?
Yeah, if I was smart, I'd have two different guns, but I just clean it out. I'd spray it and then I just clean it out right away.
A lot of those polys, I mean, we shot a lot of catalyzed urethane through both cheap guns and expensive guns at Breedlove, and as long as you stayed on it and you kept them clean, like, it seems like you should just be off to the races with building stuff that you'd never clean off. But it seems like it's pretty forgiving stuff, kind of counterintuitively.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
So you got your nitro on, and then what's your kind of rub out schedule? Are you doing random orbital sanders with a large compressor? Are you doing everything by hand to get up to your final gloss? You got buffing wheels? Are you doing ointments and preparations, scented oils, candles?
Yes, ointments, tinctures. Yeah, there's occasionally a chicken will wander in here and not make it back out. So, well, I'll tell you, I'll run through my rub out schedule, and it's not like a lot of things work. There's a lot of different ways to do this. So I'm just going to preface this by saying that, right now, this is what works for me, is that I will use a small random orbit and I'll start with 1200 grit. And all I do is I'm just getting out all the orange peel and get everything flat. At that point, I abandon the random orbit and I will use a pretty hard block, like a Dura block or a cork block, and I'll go with a 3M wet sand with some soap in the water, and I'll do 1500 unidirectional strokes, and really inspect the guitar carefully in the light, because this is where most of the work is. You want to make sure that you have completely gotten out any pigtails from the random orbit, and that the random orbit is really, again, to me, it's not necessarily, it's to make things flat-ish and get out the orange peel, but it's that 1500 hard block that I think really gives you the superior looking glass finish. So I'll spend most of my time on that. And then once I do the 1500 hard block, I'll do a Trizac foamed back 3000 by hand, and I will do, again, unidirectional sanding pattern that's offset to the 1500, so that you can see, when you've gotten all the 1500 scratches out. And then at that point, if someone was smarter than I am, they'd probably go to a buff. But what I do is I'll do the same thing with the 5000 Trizac. And then at that point, the finish is so close to a gloss, I could just use some like 3M Perfecta 2 rub out compound, and I can just rub the guitar out by hand. It's almost nothing to go from 5000 to a high gloss with the Perfecta 2.
Yeah.
I use the blue Scott shop towels wrapped around a soft caul, and so I don't have to buff, but I'm going to come back to that in a second. So that produces a really nice, very flat finish. There's no chance of any mistakes on the buffer or heating up the finish and introducing any texture. But lately, what I've done is, instead of doing the liquid compound final rub out, I will go to the buffing wheel, but I'll only go to my finest compound on my softest wheel, and bring up the 5000 to a high gloss. And I find that I really don't have to lay into it at all. It's really kind of a fluff and buff, and that's how I get. That's my rub out schedule. On the neck, I do something a little different, especially around the headstock and the tuner holes. You got to be a little bit more careful with not getting any water under the finish. Mm-hmm. But on the face of the headstock, I just do a full hand rub out. No machine, no buffing. I use pretty sharp corners around my bindings on the headstock, and the propensity to rub out through a corner is just too great a risk for me. So I do all that by hand.
Yeah, I haven't used the 3M. Did we say finesse it, or was that what you're saying? It comes in a white bottle with the purple lettering or something like that?
Yeah, I've got it right here. I'll grab it.
I haven't used that in ages. I switched to Menzerna liquid a while back. Yeah.
Perfect too.
Yeah, that's what we had in the at Breedlove, and I love that stuff. I actually
I like this stuff too. It just seems perfect for lacquer.
My around the shop just regular polish is I'll take a spray bottle and then put like 5 drops of that and then just dilute it with water, and that's just like my general purpose spray cleaner, so I'm not like constantly buying polish. And boy, it is nice. And if you want to like get fancy with it, you could throw in a drop or 2 of like Carnauba wax, and it just makes a really nice wipe down cleaner.
Yeah.
So we got it all polished up, and I really like that. I like that hand rubbed. Those thoughts about hand rubbed and keeping the heat down on it, and keeping the keeping the risk low. The other thing that you said that I'd like to accentuate is the idea of having when you are hand rubbing to have a block, like a hard block or a caul behind it. That really, like in repair, that comes up a lot, that it's better to polish out with a block backed rag rather than just kind of free balling it with with your hand. Like you produce definitely different results with that back.
Yeah.
Especially if you're rubbing out soft finish where you might dip it, or you're trying to feather 2 areas together. So you got it on, and then you're assembling the guitar, and then are you fretting boards off the body, or are you fretting after the guitar is completely assembled? And what are you assembling guitars with, like square fingerboards? Are they already radiused, or what's kind of your?
They are already radiused, and I like to do my fretwork as kind of almost the last thing on the guitar. So I will. I'll set my neck, both the yaw and the pitch. I'll put kind of a dummy bridge on the guitar, just sort of taped to the top, and make sure everything's lining up. And then I'll attach the neck, which is just simply 2 bolts and some glue on the underside of the fingerboard. And at that point, I will fret the guitar. And it's different when I do a new guitar versus a repair. But since we're talking about one of my builds, I'll prep the fingerboard flat. But maintaining I use a compound radius. So I'll adjust the truss rod to where the neck is as flat as I can get it with the truss rod. And then I'll flatten it out with a big flat sanding beam. And then I will mill in what I call a differential radius into the fingerboard. So I'll mill in more radius on the bass side than I do on the treble side. I guess this is just going to be a shameless plug, but I go over all of how I do this in the fretting video I just shot with Robbie O'Brien. So if anybody wants more information, it's there. So I'll mill in this differential radius, and then, what I've done is I've taken this nice even compound radius all the way up the board, and I've kind of screwed it up, because I don't have what's happening, say at the 5th fret is different than the 2nd fret, etc. And it's not even across the board. It's sort of falling off towards the treble side. So I have a kind of a hybrid system where I actually put the frets in, where I will use I'll do a hide glue install, I'll hammer in the frets, but then I'll follow it up with a cauls, which I should show you. So let me grab those. So I make a series of these blocks, and they have the general taper of the fingerboard, and the nut end is marked. So this one's frets 1 through 3, and you can see I've got these 3 dowels on here. Now the bottom of this caul is flat. So, and when I first glue on these dowels, and I just tack them on with super glue, and you can use pine or maple, it doesn't matter. I'll take a block plane, and I'll just kind of shave down the middle one to start to establish the radius. And I'm going to see if I can do this here. Hold on. I can't quite see what I'm doing.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, so again, I've got no frets in the guitar, and I've prepped my fingerboard exactly how I want it. I'll put some sandpaper down, and then I'll just dress the bottom of these dowels. And I've got blocks that go all the way up and down the board. They cover about 3 or 4 frets. And the reason I like this method is that I don't, with the brass static cauls, you're kind of locked into a 15 or a 16 or a 12. And because of how I prep my boards, and I'm intentionally milling in more radius on the bass than the treble, the actual geometric profile of my boards, if you were to graph it out, it's not a consistent radius. So with these type of cauls, I can get this infinitely variable system. I just match it to the board. I'll put some pencil lines, some witness lines down here, just a little bit of sanding, and this thing fits perfectly on the board. So I'll put in my couple, 3 frets, and then and I hammer them in. That gets them, say, 90% of the way down. In a perfect world, they would be 100% perfect, and I wouldn't have to clamp them down. I just find when I use the hammering method followed up with this press caul with these dowels, that I have to do basically no fret dressing afterwards. Yeah. There's no leveling. I don't, to me, I like to have to do fret leveling after you've installed the frets means that you haven't prepped your board right, or you haven't put your frets in right. So the goal for me is to do no fret leveling. Get your board perfect, put your frets in, and when I clamp this down, and I can show you how I do that, the wood is soft enough where it'll actually compress around each fret. So even if there's a slight discrepancy between the caul and the board, I actually want the wood to compress around the frets. And, I do this all the way up the board. I use the same process, and I just find this has improved my fretwork, to where I don't have to do any dressing afterwards. So, yeah, let me show you one more thing here. So, you've probably seen these. I made up some extras on my CNC.
Yeah.
So this just fits a Bessie clamp, and then basically, the Bessie goes in here, mm-hmm. and then I clamp these down, and I made some extras so I can do, multiples, because with the hide glue, I like to let it dry. Maybe, I don't want to be in a rush. 20 minutes. If I'm not in a rush is good, just to make sure the hide glue really kicks off and cleans up with water. It's really nice. I do go over this in excruciating detail in the fretting video. I realize I'm kind of talking quick and going through the process, but that's how I do that. I should mention that, over the neck body joint has always been kind of a booger. Mm-hmm. It's an area where if you are pressing in your frets, how do you get good stability? And what I've come up with is this long caul. So it's got 3 short dowels. And so I'm going to, I'll switch this around and show you. This is worth seeing. Okay. So this sits like this, right? I've got this end clamped. I usually put in a little spacer block, and then I'll just put in a clamp through the sound hole, and you can see I've got pressure right over the neck body. You know, I don't have to do any clamping on the heel or the back of the guitar or anything like that. And again, the what I like about this is I have a consistent method all the way up the board, and I just find that again, I'm trying to do the work up front rather than having to go back and dress frets. I'm going to show you one thing that I guess I shouldn't skip over. So I don't know if you can see this, but I also do a hemispherical fret end.
Yeah.
So I'm dressing out the fret ends before they go on the guitar. So between dressing out these fret ends and how I install the frets, again, the idea is that once the frets are in, you're pretty much done.
Yeah.
One other thing I should mention is that I like to fret up to the 12th fret and then string the guitar up, and then adjust the truss rod, come in with a notch straight edge, and just see exactly how the fingerboard is laying over the body. Often if you're going to get, little humps or dips or fall off or ski slopes, it's in, frets 14 through 20. So this gives you a chance to evaluate all of that under tension and make corrections now before you put the frets in. And, I have all the little sanding bars that'll go underneath the strings. So I will correct that under tension and then put my frets in. And, for my own guitars, I kind of know how they move under tension. So usually I don't have to make any corrections, but I just like to double check. And sometimes maybe I'll have a little bit of a, hump under tension of a couple thousandths, and this gives me a chance to take it out so I don't have to do it later in the frets.
Yeah, it's interesting how much, I did, this is completely not completely unrelated, but sort of unrelated. I did an experiment a while back. I was just going through my Instagram and looked at it, where I actually fretted the fingerboard extension first, and decided to see if I could move the neck angle with compression on the fingerboard extension. And because you would think, that's a lot of frets over a short amount of space, and if you've ever fretted a board off of the body, like it cups, the most extreme it's going to cup is at the very end where all the frets are, because you're getting the maximum amount of compression in there. But it occurred to me that I was thinking that maybe some of the jobs where the guitar kind of eats the neck angle after you get done doing a neck reset might be from people loosening up fret slots over the fingerboard extension. Was kind of the intellectual road I was going down. But anyway, I tried cramming them in to see if I could move the neck angle just by kind of like forcing that area back, and sure enough, it was subtle. It was very subtle, and it might have been, I might have been reading something into the protractor that wasn't there, but I felt like it moved the neck block area a little bit.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah.
I never would have thought of that.
Well, it might be wrong too. I might have. I just did it once, and I was kind of curious about it. But that thing of the getting back to what you were talking about all of that tension, like across the across a compression fretting, like it's not just doing what you're hoping for, which is to backbow the neck. That tension's being distributed through the neck in crazy ways,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I mean, if you imagine that you can backbow an entire neck with like the first 10 frets, like just imagine what forces are really going on throughout there. But so you're actually not in your builds with your carbon fiber rods and everything. It sounds like you're trying to get away from compression having any effect on the neck, and most of what you're doing is probably going to be with your double action rod, kind of moving the neck around with that, and then hoping it remains stable.
Yeah, I found that at least with this particular rod, it doesn't. I have to put a little tension on it, because it's a two-way rod, I don't want it to be in the neutral position, because then it might have a propensity to cause some weird rattling issues. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I want the rod to take up a little bit of tension, but obviously, throughout the guitar's life, I'm thinking, the rod may need to be engaged more and more. So I don't want it to be heavily engaged when the guitar is new. It should really just be a little bit of tension on there, and you should do it.
Yeah, I think that's right. I definitely shoot for that in refrets, like a little bit of tension on the rod. Mm-hmm. But yeah, not heavily engaged. Although that, I don't know if you saw, I did a re-rod on a V here recently, and even after the new rod, it still was like, I had to dime that thing out to get that neck straight. I think that was that era where Gibson was like, they'd gotten burned on too many backbowed necks, so they decided to glue everything up with extreme bow into it, and then tighten.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it was just. Have you ever seen those Gibsons where it's dragging the anchor through the neck? Like it's like really punky wood. You just get all this rod out the end of the truss rod cover.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's kind of off subject too. I'm getting off subject. So you're strung up and you got frets in, and you're ready to sit down at the computer and tell your customer to bang out a check. Bang out a check. Where's my money?
Yeah, well, if it was only that simple. So once I have the frets in, I'll glue the bridge on. And then what I like to do is I just put the strings on. I don't wait. I just string the guitar up to full tension. And I really like to have the guitar around my shop for a minimum of 2 weeks, preferably 3. I find, for my guitars, maybe other people find this, that somewhere between week 2 and 3, the guitar really moves. The neck changes. I have to usually adjust the truss rod again. I find the top pulls up a little bit, and I want to see those changes happen. And usually, I'll kind of rough in the setup after I first string it up, and somewhere between week 2 and 3, the action's raised to full 32nd. So it's only after that settling in that I then make a final nut, saddle, and then start really dialing the guitar in and putting on the pick guard. I have gotten into some modal analysis of guitars in the last year, so I'll measure some frequency response curves. I'm still trying to figure out, what all this means, but right now I'm sort of taking data. And,
so is that the Gallup method, or is this a different method?
Well, as far as I know, this is a method by Trevor Gore. He wrote a 2-volume series of books on his methodology, and it's not just to be used after the guitar is completed, but while you're building the guitar. Mm-hmm. And it was not this past summer, but the summer before, I took a couple-day course with him down at Robbie's, actually. And the math in his books is quite heavy. It was way above my pay grade, but seeing him, do it in person, I understood a lot more. Mm-hmm. For me, it was all very interesting. It was really different than what I was usually doing, and I'm just trying to keep an open mind about it. I think, I'm not ready to say that, this is the path to the top of the mountain. I think there are several paths, several right ways to do things. But, learning more about your guitars and looking at them in different ways, I think is always a good idea.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like somebody's going to come up with something on that angle that makes some sense at some point. I remember looking through old Guild of American Luthiers and some of the early symposiums or whatever they were up to, and guys standing around with frequency generators and glitter on the top of tops, and mm-hmm. Thinking, what are you guys up to?
Yeah.
You're trying to take the fun out of this, but like maybe mm-hmm. just like with the CNC stuff, that like people should be allowed to have fun in whatever direction they want to go with it. Whether it's bringing science to frequencies or cutting things out with robots. Like I'm pretty open-minded about how we spend our time in this crazy profession. Try not
Very
to
true. Yeah.
Try not to rain on too many parades except my own.
Mm-hmm.
But well, what else do you want to cover on the guitars? I think, did we get soup to nuts on this, or?
Yeah, we glossed over some things, but I don't know how we could possibly fit everything in there. But
it does seem hard to do. Before we go, I'd like you to show off your nut file innovation, if you could.
Oh, sure. Yeah, you got it. Let me grab those.
I also highly recommend to anybody watching this, go check out his fretwork instruction on O'Brien's website. It's I'll leave a link in the description. It's really, really good, and it's pretty comprehensive. What is your competition? Is it still only Dan's old videos? Like who else is doing a long form fretting tutelage kind of thing?
I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, I don't know. Robbie has a really good thing going with his video courses. He has a lot of courses that he teaches that other builders teach. And some people just like learning that way. I mean, I know there's some great books out there on fretwork too, but I think the video format can be a really good way for some people to learn. And, I'm sure that the methods that I show are different from what other people do. I like to think about it, especially if you're doing repair work. It's good to have a lot of tools in the toolbox, because every guitar has its personality. And just because I use one method on one guitar, I may have to totally switch up things. I may have to do some compression fretting or the reverse or a different type of fretboard prep. So I think it's good to know all this successful methods that are out there.
Yeah.
And I also, for me personally, like Dan Erlewine, Frank Ford, those guys were my repair heroes and teachers, and whatever information they put out, I swallowed it up.
Yeah.
So anything that they have to say about fretwork, I would be the first to listen.
Yeah, that's right. Those guys have left a long shadow on the trade. Like it's really been interesting getting to know Dan over the last couple of years, and realizing what those guys were just like at the vanguard of something that did not exist. It kind of did. Teeter to a lesser extent before him. And Kamamoto and some of the other book writers or whatever, but there was nothing. There was just nothing except for guys just grabbing, maybe some guys that had a little bit of background in violins or something maybe would work on some guitars, but there was nothing specifically. And I'm sure the violin looths probably did their guitar work like they were, like a, I don't know, probably not very earnestly, I would imagine, but
yeah, maybe. So
Frank Ford's stuff, and do you remember the old Frets magazine? Do you remember?
Yeah.
Frank had great articles in Frets magazine about repair when there was nothing. Like that was a good resource. So anyway, nut files.
Yeah, so I have a set of my Grobet, I may be pronouncing that wrong, nut files. And what I did was, let me turn these around. You can see I've got the thickness of each nut file on top. And then, can you see this, Ian?
Yeah, I can, just barely.
Yeah. So what I did was I filed a little chisel point in each one and sharpened it just like I would a regular chisel. And now I have a gauge set of chisels So, these are really useful for if you need something very specific to, say, clean out a purfling line or do some repair work to purfling lines, or even to clean out a nut slot. These are pretty handy and they hold an edge pretty well. So it's I've found these to be very useful.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really good stuff. Like the gauge chisel, like I have the old, I think they probably come from Micromark, but those old StewMac chisels. And that little bend in there makes them impossible to get a good edge on. I'm gonna sharpen up my Grobets, and that Grobet steel is like that Swiss steel is like probably really nice to sharpen, I would think.
It's good stuff. I did. I'm going to show you one more thing. If I can find it. So I have found it handy, even though I have the nut files, where I've taken just pieces of tool steel. And for example, this one's cobalt, and I just jammed it into an old handle I had lying around, and I could just grind this on any aluminum oxide belt. You don't need diamond tools to do it because it's not carbide, and just keep the steel cool. And again, I'll take a micrometer and I can get very specific with the widths. And I find that when I'm cutting miters on side purflings, especially, they're at that point in my building, they're captured. So I have to come in with a very specific width that is exactly the hypotenuse of the miter. And this is a joiner blade, a 6-inch joiner blade. Did the same thing. Put this on my grinder until I got the exact width. And I find that the steel on these is great. So I made a lot of these little tools. And then this one, I took a little piece of a very thin Japanese saw. I think this is about 10 thousandths. And I just shaped it and cut out a piece with a diamond wheel and my Dremel, and super glued it into a piece of walnut. And this is really good for scribing. So I use this tool a lot. Cool. Yeah. So, being in the guitar business, either building or repair, I find that you gotta, sometimes you need to think outside the box, and if something's not available, make it.
Yeah. That's the way. That's the way of doing it. Plus, you go broke buying red handle stuff off of StewMac all the time. But
true.
But they do produce a lot of stuff that I can't live without. Like I can't live without their radius sanding beams now. Like that's for repair. That's bread and butter stuff now. Well, Michael, I'm going to let you get back to Luthen. I got to get to Luthen. I want to thank you for hanging out and showing me around the shop and showing everybody what's going on and what's what and who's who.
You got it.
I'm gonna post all the applicable links, and yeah, man, thanks. Let's do this again.
All right, thank you. And Ian, I'm going to have you on the podcast. It's going to be great. I want to ask you the questions. And I know you're totally capable of letting loose and getting a little cantankerous, so I want to hear it.
I don't know if the Fretboard Journal people want to hear my views on it, but we'll see. Yeah, we'll do it.
All right, sounds good, Ian. Thank you.
All right. Take care, Michael. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.